to the healthcare world, to New York City. We go to Matt Lewis of Inizio Medical, and look at his title: Augmented Generative Intelligence. What's the hardest thing? I love that question.
Thank you, Gerald, and thank you to the audience for being here and spending a bit of your time with us all. I think we hopefully can learn and grow together. So, yeah, I'm going to chat a little bit in the time we have together about this idea of augmented intelligence, which generative makes possible. I think the generative is really amazing and brilliant and so robust and really kind of ushers into the world a reality that has been talked about for a long time, this concept of augmented intelligence. And it really is something that is now feasible in a way that has never really been seen before. So we'll talk a little bit about why that matters and how it really is meaningful for us as people and as humans really in the world, and especially within life sciences where this is really critical. Just a couple disclosures. Inizio is my firm. I'm a partner here. I have equity interest in the firm. I'm a shareholder in a couple other firms that I advise on the side. My comments that I'm going to share in the next 14 minutes are mine and mine alone. They've not been reviewed by anyone, so they really just reflect my narrative and my viewpoint, if you will. And don't hold me accountable for anything other than what I say and my own opinions. That they've been reviewed by my boss or by anyone else, but they reflect hopefully a sense of the world and where we're going. So just my role, as Gerald said, is Global Chief Artificial Augmented Intelligence Officer. I know it's a mouthful. When people ask me what I do, I say I'm head of AI. It's kind of where we've been, which is artificial intelligence, and where we're going, which is augmented intelligence. Inizio is life sciences' largest partner for communications and consulting. We help bring molecules to market, medical devices, therapeutics, digital therapeutics, anything that really helps improve people's health. That's where we fit. All the major pharmaceutical companies, biotech, medical device, digital therapeutics, we're their largest partner. So we help interpret science and help clinicians, stakeholders, payers, patients understand what meaning comes from that so they can improve their health and improve outcomes in their life. So a little bit about augmented intelligence. Gartner, I know some of you in the audience maybe worked at Gartner at one point or still work there today. Gartner defined augmented intelligence back in 2015. It's not our definition, it's theirs. They defined it as a partnership-oriented kind of design pattern, if you will, a human-centered partnership model where people and AI work together to enhance cognitive performance, including learning, decision-making, and new experience. The way I think about augmented intelligence is it's really kind of like the human is like the alpha and the omega in AI being augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence. You can't have augmented intelligence without the human. The human starts the process, they're there throughout the process, and they're there when the final deliverable is consumed, utilized, and affects hopefully improving their life. The human is central to everything in augmented intelligence. But partnering with humans is quite difficult, actually, in the real world. All the things that were shared before by Maisa are completely true. What is possible in the generative stack, in partnership with Microsoft, we're a Microsoft partner. Many others are as well, or perhaps you work with another organization, maybe Google or Amazon or Baidu. There are so many possibilities that exist today that did not exist 12, 18, 24 months ago. There's so much complexity and nuance and considerations in prompt tuning, fine tuning, building models, deploying them, et cetera, all that complexity is totally valid and real. But the true challenges that exist are not so much technological anymore. They really are human considerations. And in life sciences, the human considerations are many and varied and often and multiple and really need to be considered because partnership is what makes augmented intelligence sing. You have to consider things like, do you have the right data? Is it relevant? Is it current? Is it accessible? Can you purchase it? Is it something that you can utilize? And does it drift? Does it decay? Is it resilient? And these things matter when you're thinking about the models that are relevant, and do they matter for the people you're trying to serve? People's mindset as they approach the challenges at hand matters a lot. We'll talk a little bit about that in the slides to come. People's intelligence matters a lot as well. It's not just, are they book smart? Did they go to a good school? Or are they considered kind of relevant in their field? But how they actually think about the information that's being consumed and how they apply it both in a near and a far perspective matters tremendously as we stand up these models beyond the POC stage that Maisa was talking about, but actually get implemented in the enterprise and beyond when they're scalable and consistent. We really need to think about what that intelligence looks like. And then in life sciences and in many other regulated industries, there's a deep consideration for subject matter experts about what role they play as models and generative becomes more consistent and persistent as well. So data, first of all, it's not what it used to be. You think back 3 generations ago, say in the 1950s, the average doctor in the US would interact with maybe one new person in their life every day. Now in 2021, 2022, it's about 5 people a day, most of those coming from social media. Also, back in 1951, the average physician, if they graduated medical school in 1951, could expect to go their entire career and have that corpus, all the content for medical knowledge, double in that 40 years. Now, the average medical corpus doubles every 40 days. So it's just not possible for the average clinician to know everything, either in their specialty or in the space at large, not just in the course of their lifetime, but literally in the course of a quarter. During COVID, when we were supporting companies like Moderna and Pfizer and Gilead from Remdesivir, the entire medical knowledge for COVID was exploding. Every week, there were 10,000 new scientific articles coming into the environment that people had to become cognizant of and then make decisions off of in a very rapid period. If they didn't do it, the vaccines that are coursing through many of our bloodstreams couldn't exist. So the way in which we process information is a completely different environment than it was 3 generations ago. We can't memorize everything. We can't be expected to know what our forebears knew. And we shouldn't kind of expect that moving forward, the models can't help us extend that cognitive performance in some way. Also, the way we think about intelligence is now less a consideration of IQ or kind of what's smart or how we respond, and more of a kind of multiple intelligences. Like sometimes it's about thinking about contextual intelligence, what's relevant for the situation. Sometimes it's about thinking about how do we use experiences we had that are relevant before that might be useful now. Sometimes it's more about practical intelligence, about knowing kind of what works in what situation and how to move it forward. And you have to be able to flex and be adaptable and be resilient and agile and understand what matters in what situation so that it can be useful in the given situation that is being assigned. And that's really up to the individual. It is also a truism that, we are all humans. We're all people. Everyone on this phone, I think, is probably a human, unless, there's some robots sneaking around. But you can take the humans out of the cave. This is not so far along for us that we weren't still in caves. These are all Mid-Journey produced images, by the way. But the human in the cave on the far left is not so far removed from the human in the middle that's in the big enterprise. They might have a cell phone or an iPad or a desktop or a laptop computer, but they're still essentially a human. And then on the far right, in a regulated enterprise like life sciences or fintech or finance or healthcare, they have multiple systems, they have processes, they have guidelines, they have compliance, they have expectations, but they still have essentially a human brain. And our human brains had way longer to evolve in the situation on the left than they've had on the situation on the right in big business. And as a result, there's this kind of default mindset that all of us as humans have wired into us, into our brains hundreds of thousands of years ago. And the default mindset is one of fear and scarcity. We grew up thinking that we weren't going to get a lot for our families, our tribes, and that we weren't going to have a lot to kind of go around, if you will. So we grew up thinking that that's what we should expect. So in order to think about generative, which kind of opens the floodgates to every possible consideration, whether it's copy or content or creative or coding or anything, those are not things that most people are used to or comfortable with. So we have to really think not just about what the models can do. Yeah, those are great. That's wonderful. But we also have to think about how do we change our mindsets? How do we get used to abundance? How do we think about changing the way we work and how we incentivize how we work so that we can do more with less? No, that's not the case anymore. Now we can do more with more. And when we do more with more, how does it change our business model? How do we change the time we work so we're more efficient, but we actually enjoy the work and it affects society? Those are things that are happening now. It also is quite relevant in the life sciences space that you can't really stand up a model, any model, without having a subject matter expert. And the people that are subject matter experts in our world typically have doctoral degrees, PharmDs, PhDs, MDs. They are quite knowledgeable in a specific field, maybe cancer, maybe a rare disease, maybe neuropsychiatric spaces, if you will. They have many years of experience. They've done research. They've published. They've taught. They have a wealth and a breadth and a depth of understanding of a space. And they are natural complements, partners, if you will, to generative models and to other situations, other data models that can help really kind of bring out the robustness and the richness of what's possible. Trying to kind of just throw something over the fence and hope that it'll work and that they'll be able to figure out how to use it is not helpful. So most of the considerations from an AI perspective tend to kind of focus in on these kind of vertical applications within life sciences, starting with text and code, then image, then video, then audio, then coding, and the rest, like we're talking about previously. I would say in life sciences, augmented intelligence, the hardest thing really is focusing, centering on these human solutions where we emphasize the right intelligence with the right data, relying on the right expertise in the right mindset, growth oriented, solutions oriented, where the focus is on uplifting, raising up cognitive performance and decision making in order, in our case, to improve clinical outcomes for doctors and patients. That is an extremely hard challenge. That is our focus. So just a little bit about how we got here and where we're going. So in the old world, the first, say, 20-ish years of my career in life sciences, when organizations wanted to communicate to stakeholders, they would tend to publish things in journals, look at clinical study reports, think about what they can access, the data that they could kind of retrieve, if you will, and then what should be said about those things, and then get into a room, talk about what they should say, and it would look something like this. Someone would almost kind of say, if you want a lexicon around this particular molecule or substance, maybe you want a J, or you want to say this word, and people would talk about it, and it'd be a little bit subjective, qualitative, some shouting perhaps, and they'd adopt a particular stance around what should actually be offered into the scientific and technical community. Now it's much more of an artificial intelligence, evidence-based approach, leveraging, in this case, natural language processing, where we can ingest a full corpus of an entire scientific therapeutic area, maybe 10,000 plus papers, posters, and preprints, where we can build an ontology or a curated vocabulary for a project, including all the key mesh terms, the concepts, all the entities, all the things that matter for that particular audience. And then our trained subject matter experts, our PhDs, our PharmDs, our MDs, our strategists evaluate the competitive and contextual considerations and produce some type of dynamic heat map or interactive deliverable so folks can figure out what can action and how it goes forward. So it improves consistency, it improves strategic implementation, and better outcomes result. Similarly, everyone's probably done some form of either scientific or technical or competitive intelligence in their lives. You go to a big conference, you see posters on the walls, you go to sessions where people present, folks like us, if you will, and then you try to remember what you heard so it applies back to what you do on the job. This is like the traditional model across all conferences. In the new world, though, the modern world, subject matter experts are thought partners to generative AI, where you can augment the possible. So you essentially use, again, an ontology-driven machine learning, deep learning, NLP, generative approach to ingest the full corpus of every possible asset out in the world, voice of customer assets, market research, consulting, competitive intelligence, everything out there in the world from a medical, technical, clinical trial world, and then support that in terms of on-demand activities that folks can ingest and review to be able to make decisions that actually support the business moving forward. This particular implementation of it won an award with our group about a month ago with AstraZeneca, where we were able to kind of speed time to decision in oncology. Similarly, when teams are trying to support clinical trials, you go out and talk to a number of investigators about the things they're finding meaningful in the study itself. And typically, you would literally capture this information in an Excel spreadsheet or like in a Google Doc. And it would all be listed exactly like this. This is an actual example of one that was captured a number of years ago, where you say, the doctor is stating that, a third of the patients with leukemia may be dose reduced due to X or Y. There's some toxicity, or there's an issue with insurance, or they can't get a prior authorization, whatever it might be. And then a human would have to go in and try to figure out, is this like a real insight, or is this just something that's interesting? And you could spend hours and hours just going through every one of these little line items to figure out, is this something meaningful for the business, or is it just maybe an opportunity for training for the individual? Now there is an opportunity with generative to both on the front end of the feedback loop, work with subject matter experts to figure out what really is meaningful, and then bake into a platform an ingestion process that identifies a priori what actually matters to the business. So we ask better questions. And then on the back end, we're actually interacting with customers, that being researchers, investigators, payers, other stakeholders, that when that insight comes forward, we can refine scientific communication and content so it speeds time to outcomes and overall improves decision-making. So again, augmented intelligence in life sciences is complex. It's complex because the models and their capability, our robustness has improved, but it's also complex because human partnership is not an easy thing. We are complex beings, and there's a complexity that matches the complexity of the models. However, if we approach it from a perspective of applying the right data with the right mindset, with the right intelligence, and the right expertise, then hopefully that partnership is one that's aligned towards improved outcomes. And sometimes I think if the hardest thing is achieved, it's also the right thing. So the hardest thing and the right thing can be the same. Thanks so much.